Welcome to episode 29 of our ComfyUI tutorial series. Today I will show you how to replace the background of your product images. All you need is an image of your product, but this method also works for people or animals. You simply need a main subject and the background will be removed and replaced with a different image that you prompt. I will open the first workflow, which you can get for free from Discord, just like all the workflows from my episodes. I'll start with this one called Replace Complex Background, because it works best for images with a background that isn't a simple solid color. The workflow is split into two parts. In the first part, we load the image and remove the background. Click on Upload and add your own image. I'll use this perfume bottle as an example. It could be a photo of a product that you took with your phone, placed on a table somewhere. The background doesn't matter as long as the product is clearly visible. What's important is to set the right dimensions here. It works best with values around 1024 pixels. Right now, it's a square ratio. I resized it so it doesn't get too large in the K sampler. If you want a 16:9 ratio, you can use something like 1024 by 576 pixels, for example. Once the image is resized, I remove the background. More about that in episode 22. A mask is also created, which I'll use to remove the background. Right now, the mask is for the object, so I'm using an invert mask node to invert the mask so we only select the background. What you see in white is the selection, and what is black is not selected. I remember it like this. Think of it as light. If there's light, you can see things. If there's no light, it's all black, and you can't see anything. Then we enable the second group, which is actually inpainting from episode 19, combined with ControlNet from episode 14. There's one extra step. Right-click on this alpha image and select Copy Image. You could load the image and select the mask from the output folder, but I prefer just selecting the node. You'll see an outline when it's selected, and using the shortcut Ctrl+V to paste it. Now we have our mask with the background selection. Next, we need a prompt. Remember, Flux works well with long, descriptive prompts. When I run the workflow, it will use the Flux model and it will use the inpaint nodes that I explained in episode 19, but with ControlNet as well. Right now, it uses the base image for inpainting because it needs some background to inpaint something. The size of the image that we set and resize is also the size of the final image, and it's the size used for inpainting because it's the entire background. So the final image will look like this. Try to keep it around 1024 pixels or multiples of 8 or 64 for width and height. For ControlNet, I use the alpha mask to have a clear depth map of the subject. You can play around with values like denoise or apply ControlNet, but I've been able to get all kinds of replacements with these values. And here's the result. It's not perfect every time. It depends on the settings, the prompt, and how well the alpha mask cuts out the subject. But it does a good job of creating a believable background, making it look like the subject is actually there with the floor beneath it and sometimes even reflections. If you don't like it, or if you want another version, just run the workflow again. Look at how the lights and shadows interact. We have the shadow of the bottle and it looks like it belongs there. Here's how I like to create prompts that integrate my product. First, I upload my original image, in this case, the perfume bottle. Then I ask ChatGPT to create a stable diffusion prompt for the bottle, but I want it to be placed on a rock with moss somewhere in the jungle, with warm lights during golden hour, and some red flowers blurred in the background. The prompt I gave could stand alone, but I prefer more detailed prompts, which is why I use ChatGPT. I guide it by explaining how I want the scene to start, with the subject, the environment, what's around it, and how I want the light to be. Think like a photographer. If you were taking a photo of your product, how would it look? How would you create and arrange the scene? Once I have the long prompt, I copy it and paste it into the workflow. After running the workflow, I get this result. It has the rock with moss, the red blurred flowers, and the warm light. Now, I want to make some changes. I ask to see the reflection of the bottle in a water pond, and ChatGPT gives me a new prompt. The result looks like this. I have the rock and water, but I can't see the reflection because of the rock. So I asked to remove the rock so the bottle is on the water and the reflection becomes visible. On the first try, I get this. The reflection of the bottle is now visible. I might need to run another seed to get better water, or I could have asked for water ripples. But the idea is that you can have some control with prompts if you describe what you want accurately. A common issue could be that sometimes you get extra things behind the product. In this case, the workflow generated a perfume bottle similar to mine and placed the original bottle on top. Sometimes the bottle behind can be slightly different, causing visible details from behind the bottle. You can either generate a few more images until you get one that works, or you can use Photoshop to fix those tiny mistakes. Depending on the subject, you may need to blur the mask a bit. You can use values like 8 or 16. I usually use multiples of 8. For example, if you have a person with hair, you might want to blur the mask so it blends better. In this generation, the result looks better. There are no extra things sticking out from behind, and we have a nice bottle reflected in the water. Sometimes blurring the mask doesn't fix the edges completely, so you might want to check the original mask. If I look at the mask now, I can see that the lines around it aren't perfectly clean, which can sometimes influence the result. In these cases, you might need to fix the mask in Photoshop, or even create a clean mask from scratch. Let me show you quickly how I would do this in Photoshop. I create a new document with a size of 1024 pixels and a white background. Then I drag my image onto the document. I arrange the perfume bottle as I want it. Maybe I need it to be bigger or want it placed on the left side. If there are any gaps, it's better to fill them because we need some pixels there for inpainting, and solid colors won't work. You can fill the gaps using content aware or generative fill. It doesn't need to be perfect as it's just for replacing, but it does need something in the gap. Once done, I save that image as this will be the one used for inpainting in that position. Now it's time to create the alpha mask. You could use the object selection tool to create a selection, apply the mask, and then make the image black or paint the mask to adjust it. Since the bottle has clean edges, I prefer to reduce the transparency so I can see what I'm doing. I then use the pen tool. At the top, I select shape and a black fill so I can create a vector shape that's adjustable. I reduce the layer opacity so I can see behind the black shape, and then I start drawing the shape. There are many pen tool tutorials online. You just click and drag or use various shortcuts to create the shape you want. I like the pen tool because I can create any shape with clean edges, but it's not the right tool for hair or other areas that don't have sharp edges. Now, I have the black shape on top. If I move the image on top of the black silhouette shape, I can press Alt and click between layers to create a clipping mask. This way I can see the bottle and its edges clearly, and I can adjust them to perfectly cut the bottle. If I hide the white layer, I could save the bottle as a transparent PNG, but what we need is the black and white image to use as a mask. So I keep the black bottle visible and the white background visible so I can save that image. The inpaint will recognize it as the background of the bottle selection, so it will only inpaint that area, now with a clean mask. First, we need to add the full image, the one with the background, because we need it for inpainting. I make sure the second group is turned off, then I run the workflow. It will create a new mask and transparent image, but we won't use those. Click Enable, and now what I do differently is load the new mask we created. If you compare the new mask, you'll see it's much cleaner. Now, the final result, no artifacts around the edge, so I can work with that. It's a little blurry on the edge, so let me disable the blur for the mask to see if I can get a better edge. In the preview, it's clearer now since we didn't blur it, but let's see if it affected the image. There's still a slight problem. The bottle behind is a little bigger, so it's visible behind the transparent bottle on top. Let's see if I can fix that. I can copy the image or just open it from the output folder in Photoshop. Then I can place it behind the clean cut bottle with the transparent PNG and use the remove tool to remove what's behind it. It might need a few tries to get the edge removed correctly. If I hide the top bottle, you can see what happens behind. I try to remove those edges so when the top bottle is visible, you can only see the background without the bottle behind. Sometimes this works fast, but sometimes it takes a bit more time. You can keep going until it's all cleaned up. Alternatively, you could select the entire bottle and expand the selection so it's bigger, and then use generative fill to remove that. It might not be perfect on the first try, but you could try removing small portions in a few attempts until it works. I always combine AI with Photoshop to get the best results. My bottle isn't transparent, but if it were, you could fake transparency by placing a copy of the background image on top, reducing the opacity to make it look like you can see through the bottle, and using a mask to show what's behind it. Depending on how transparent you want the bottle to look, this method can help. In my case, the original bottle wasn't transparent, or I would have seen the back edges. However, I could fake it and add some liquid inside. The point is, you can do much more than what AI gives you. Let me show you what happens when we have a solid color background, like a simple white background, as in this example. We get the mask for the bottle as usual. Don't forget to copy the new mask into the second group. Once we enable the second group, we use the same prompt as before. Now we can compare the results. The first image has a nice water reflection and background, but now with the white background, it doesn't work as well. When you use image to image with a white background, it doesn't provide enough visual detail or context for the model to interpret or replace effectively. This causes it to struggle. There are no features or textures to guide the creative process. So, what's the solution? Maybe you can come up with a better solution than mine, but here's what I did in this workflow called Replace Simpler White Background. First, we load the subject on the white background, in my case, this bottle. Then we load a background for it. It doesn't need to be something exact, but try to pick a background that conveys the mood you want. For example, I wanted something with warm colors, so I added this brick wall. Then I run the workflow just like before. It creates a transparent image that you can use later for editing or adding on top in Photoshop. It also creates the inverted mask. And what's new here is the image composite node, which places our bottle on a transparent background on top of the brick wall. It doesn't matter that the bottle appears to be in the air because the workflow is just using the image to create something new. Now, we enable the second group. Don't forget to copy the alpha mask and paste it into the load image node in the second group. I'll copy the previous prompt I used in another workflow just to see how it's different now with a different background instead of white. After replacing the prompt, I run the workflow and look at this result. We've successfully replaced the white background by providing AI with some information to work with, some context that it can use. Let's try another example. I'll disable the second group, upload a new image, this time a bag, and keep the same wall background. I run the workflow and we get the new image on the background along with the new mask that will copy and paste into the second group. Then I enable the second group and add a simple prompt. Even though ChatGPT can give better results, this will work for the test. After running the workflow, I get this result. The first result is okay, but I can see a part of another bag behind it. Now it depends on how complex the image is. As I told you before, you can run the workflow a few more times to see if it gets fixed. If not, check the mask. If that doesn't work, try playing with the settings. Increase the ControlNet strength or the end step value. Decrease the denoise. Sometimes you just have to experiment until something works. With Flux models, you'll often need to adjust the settings to get the best result. Let's say I'm feeling lazy and just want to use Photoshop to fix it. I can copy the final image and paste it into Photoshop. Then I go back and copy the transparent PNG image of the bag. You can also find it in the output folder and paste it on top of the final image. I hide the top image and now I want to remove the bag. Looking back at the recording, I realize I should have removed the top part of the bag to keep the shadow on the floor. You could try using another inpainting tool, but for me, Photoshop is usually faster when it works. Today, for some reason, it added random cubes when it should have removed everything. So I generated again and added some books or bricks. In the end, I removed the top part of the bag so it looks good, and I just masked the bottom part to fix that. Sometimes I remove small parts here and there. It usually works fine, but today, while I'm recording, it's acting strangely and adding bonus objects I didn't ask for. At the end, though, I made it work. It's probably faster to generate a new image, but if nothing works, Photoshop can help you fix it. The hardest part is getting a background that matches, and AI solves that for you. It adds a background with good shadowing and other details to make it fit. Let me try one more example. I have this can of pixaroma juice. Want some? It's creativity juice. For the background, I want something exotic with a bluish tone, so I added this image. I wrote a prompt for it, something about it being on a wooden table, exotic maybe. I disable the group, run the workflow to get the mask and the image combined with the background. I copy and paste the mask into the second group and enable it. For this one, I used a mask blur value of 8 as it worked well for this product, and this is the result. It looks quite nice. With short prompts, the result can vary a lot, but with longer prompts, you can get more targeted results. One last example, I'll open this burger image and use this brick background, which looks great and gives that mood I'm aiming for, perfect for a burger. I enable the second group, copy and paste the burger mask, and then I want to create a good prompt for this, so I use ChatGPT to generate something interesting with fire behind it. It gives me a nice detailed prompt, so I paste it into the workflow and test it. Here's the result. It has a little edge from behind the burger, but it's not bad for the first try. At this point, the depth map only considers the burger, not the background, so I could create any background. However, if you want to pick information from the background as well, you can change the image going to the preprocessor. Instead of using just the mask, you can use the image coming from that composite node, which contains both the burger and the background. I can connect that, and of course you can try different preprocessors like Canny, Depth, or whatever fits, like we did in episode 14. Now, the model can take some information from the background as well, and you can see in the generated result that we got the brick wall behind the burger. If you want to match the background even more, you can reduce the denoise value until you get a closer match to the original background. Sometimes using upscalers can help you get better quality. For example, if I open the upscaler workflow, I can use the perfume bottle image, which has a few jagged edges on the top and sides, to see if I can fix those and get a larger image. I'll add a few words about what the subject is, and when I run it, I get 3 different versions saved. One upscaled about 2 times, another upscaled about 4 times, and the last one resized back to 1024 pixels to provide a smaller, sharper version. You can use higher denoise values like 0.95 if you want more freedom, but small details such as text might be replaced with other things. So experiment to see what works best for you. Let's compare. If I slide to the left, it's before, and when I move to the right, you can see the after result. It added some extra details and made it a little sharper. I wanted to keep the text, so that's why I used a denoise value of around 0.8 or 0.85, but you can try higher values if you don't have text, and you might get even better results. I hope this helps. I wanted to show you an example with a person. Take a look at this woman. While the cutout is pretty good, there's still a slight grayish, bluish tint around the edges. Now we could place her on a background with a similar color to match, but let's say I want her on a purple background. This is how it looks. You can see that the colors don't quite match because the mask is a bit outside the hair contour and what's inside the mask is kept. So what can we do in this case? What worked for me was going to the blur mask and increasing the value. For example, I tried with 16, and now when I run the workflow, you can see that because the mask is blurred, the edges contract a little. This is how it looked before, and now look at how it looks after blurring the mask. Now it blends perfectly. It might not always work, but in this case, it worked great for me. Sometimes though, you might want to replace the subject rather than the background, but still keep the original background intact. Let me disable the second group. In this case, I don't want the mask to be inverted. I want the selection to be on the subject so I can change it. To do that, right-click on Invert Mask and choose Bypass. This will bypass the node and continue with the rest of the process. Now, when I run the workflow, you can see that the woman is selected because she's in white. Now I can copy the new mask, enable the group, and paste the new mask there. Let's change the prompt to something simple, like a portrait of a woman with blonde hair. Here's the result. Notice how the woman changes, but the background stays the same. Let me drag the original background here so you can see it better. As you can see, the original background is preserved and only the woman has been changed. If you want a more subtle change, you can play with the denoise value. Between 0.8 and 1, you can get subtle changes to the character. So with basic image to image, if you decrease the denoise value, the result will be more similar to the original, but if you increase the denoise, the changes will be more pronounced. One last thing to keep in mind is that the image ratio you use should match the width and height, but again, try to keep it around 10, 24 pixels and multiples of 8 or 64 for better results. For example, if I change the height to 768 and run the workflow, you'll see that it gets distorted. So for a square image, use the same width and height. If I load a landscape image, you can see that in square ratio, it's distorted. If I reduce it to 768, it's still distorted, but at 576 pixels, it looks just right. Now, I showed you how you can change the subject, not just the background, but it seems that for ratios other than square, the area that is in painted changes. So maybe use manual masking like in episode 19 for object replacement, and use this workflow for background replacement or for object replacement when it's still in a square ratio. It has something to do with the forced width and height on the inpaint node. But again, this workflow was made for background replacement, not object replacement. However, you can experiment with it and see if you can improve it. If you found something useful, don't forget to like and comment. Thank you, Legends and VIPs, for all your help. And of course, a big thanks to all of the members who subscribe to the membership. But also a huge shout out to all of you who help with a simple like. Don't forget to check out my other YouTube channels. I'll see you on Discord. Have a great day.